There are moments in politics when silence becomes louder than any speech, when a single file, a single sentence can shake institutions that once seemed untouchable. What happened inside Senate Intelligence Committee Room 216 that morning was one of those moments. Not a debate, not a routine hearing, but a political earthquake. At exactly 9:47 a.m., as cameras were already rolling and reporters crowded every wall, Congressman Jamie Raskin walked in carrying something no one expected, not a speech, not prepared notes, but evidence. 3 assistants followed him, each holding identical black cases. They placed them carefully in front of his seat. The soft clicks of metal locks opening echoed through the room like warning bells. Inside were hundreds of documents, color-coded, organized, and prepared with surgical precision. And for the first time that morning, FBI Director Kash Patel stopped looking relaxed. For weeks, this hearing had been promoted as another routine oversight session. Budgets, cybersecurity, counterterrorism updates, the usual political theater. But what Raskin had just placed on that table was not theater. It was a reckoning. And in the next 12 minutes, everything the public believed about the Epstein investigation would begin to collapse. For the first part of the hearing, nothing seemed unusual. Senators asked predictable questions. Patel answered with polished efficiency. Short responses, no emotion, no detail. He checked the time twice, confident, comfortable, like a man who believed nothing could touch him. Around the room, journalists typed half-heartedly. Camera operators relaxed their focus. It felt like another forgettable political morning. Then Raskin's turn came, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. People leaned forward. Cameras zoomed in. Even the court reporter paused. Raskin didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize. He simply said, 36 hours ago, a package arrived at my office. Patel barely reacted. Anonymous leaks were common in Washington. But this wasn't a leak. This was something else. Raskin opened the first folder slowly. Inside wasn't speculation. It was 6 years of internal FBI communication, emails, directives, case updates, confidential memos, over 2,000 pages, documenting one continuous pattern, not of failure, but of deliberate obstruction, a systematic effort to shut down the Epstein investigation from the inside. The room went dead silent, not the respectful kind, the stunned kind, the kind where people realize they are witnessing history. Raskin didn't accuse, he showed. The first document dated back to June 2019, an internal report from the FBI's Miami field office. Agents had identified 34 individuals tied directly to Epstein's trafficking operation. They had victim testimony, flight records, financial links. Photographic evidence enough to open major federal cases. The Miami office formally requested authorization to pursue those investigations. 3 days later, headquarters responded. Not now. Delay. Hold everything. No explanation, just a command. 34 names, frozen. And those cases were never reopened. Then came the second document, 1 week after Epstein's death, an internal order sent across the FBI. The Epstein matter was officially closed. All related investigations suspended. All evidence transferred to headquarters. Not to prosecutors, not to courts, but to archives. In law enforcement language, archives don't mean storage. They mean burial. The message was clear. This case was never meant to move forward. It was meant to disappear. Across the room, fingers froze on keyboards. Reporters stopped typing mid-sentence. Several committee members exchanged uneasy glances. And for the first time, the FBI director's calm began to crack. Not dramatically, just a slight tightening of his jaw. The kind of reaction people have when the truth gets too close. But the evidence was only getting started. Raskin leaned forward. And it didn't stop there. 6 months later, January 2020, before Ghislaine Maxwell was even taken into custody, an internal message from an FBI analyst landed in his supervisor's inbox. The analyst wrote that investigators already had enough proof to move against Maxwell. The case was ready. The arrests could happen. So the analyst asked a simple question: why are we waiting? The reply came back short and chilling: because of political pressure. Clearance was still pending. Clearance from whom? Who in this country was concerned about arresting a woman accused of trafficking children? Around the room, silence swallowed the air. The director's hands were now pressed flat against the table, unmoving, like someone grounding themselves before a fall. Then came a document from 2021. After Maxwell had already been convicted, a field agent submitted a formal report stating that Maxwell had provided the names of 47 individuals directly involved in the trafficking network. 47. with enough detail to launch immediate investigations. But scribbled across the margin of that report was a simple note: request denied, decision from above, no explanation, no legal reasoning, just a command from the top. Someone high inside the system, maybe higher than the FBI itself, had decided those names were untouchable. Nearly 50 people connected to one of the most horrifying crimes imaginable. Protected, shielded, erased from pursuit. This wasn't incompetence. This was design. Raskin then opened a folder marked in red. Across the front were two words that made the room tense instantly: top secret. This document had been hidden from the public until a federal judge forced its release just days earlier. It was dated February 2025, only 2 weeks after Patel took over as FBI director. The memo came directly from the director's office. New operational directives for all Epstein-related cases. What followed was nothing short of a shutdown. All files transferred to headquarters. No field investigations without personal approval. Witness interviews suspended. Evidence requests blocked. Every active lead frozen. And at the bottom of the page, Kash Patel's signature. The room erupted, shouting from the audience. Reporters jumping to their feet. Cameras scrambling. The chairman hammering his gavel again and again, trying to regain control. Patel didn't move. The color drained from his face. His lawyer shot up, protesting. But Raskin cut him off with a voice colder than steel. Your client can answer for himself. Behind Raskin, the screen lit up. Patel's signature enlarged for everyone to see. 10 feet tall, impossible to deny. Quietly now, Raskin asked the question that hung in the room like a verdict. Did the director recognize the document? No response. Did he recognize his own signature? Still nothing. Then came the timeline. The directive was signed the very same day Patel met with White House officials. Not days later, not weeks later, the same day. And immediately after that meeting, FBI activity collapsed. Nearly every Epstein-related investigation stopped. Witness interviews dropped to zero. Document reviews halted. Field operations canceled. The case didn't slow. It was terminated. And then came the final blow, an internal FBI list, first created in 2021, updated again under Patel's leadership in 2025. Its title was devastating. Individuals excluded from Epstein-related investigations. 47 protected names, each tagged with a reason. Political sensitivity, diplomatic concerns, national interests. In plain language, powerful people were being shielded. The codes continued. 8 names marked under national security. 15 more labeled as sensitive intelligence interests. And then came the final category, the one that made the room stop breathing: executive branch protection. 12 individuals, 12 people directly shielded by the highest levels of government. Not suspects, not witnesses, protected assets. For a moment, no one moved. Not a cough, not a whisper. Just the heavy realization settling across the chamber. Raskin repeated it slowly so there could be no misunderstanding. The White House had intervened to block investigations into people tied to Epstein's trafficking network. He turned toward the director. Was this really about national safety, or was it about protecting power? Before Patel could speak, his legal team jumped in. The words echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap. The director was invoking the Fifth Amendment. He would not answer. Not now. Not later. Not ever. The reaction was instant chaos, shouting, gasps, camera shutters firing like machine guns. The head of the FBI, the nation's top law enforcement official, was refusing to answer questions about a child trafficking investigation because answering might incriminate him. Raskin didn't look surprised. In fact, he looked like this was exactly what he had been waiting for. He slowly stood and faced the cameras. Let the country hear this clearly. The FBI director believed telling the truth about the Epstein investigation could expose him to criminal responsibility. The man tasked with enforcing federal law had just chosen silence over accountability. Then came the announcement that sent shockwaves beyond that room. Every document would be released. 2,300 pages. Emails, orders, protected lists, everything. Public by morning. No redactions. No hiding. The truth would no longer belong to closed doors. It would belong to the people. Raskin delivered one final line with calm certainty. Truth always surfaces. And today, the cover-up officially collapsed. Technically, the hearing continued. In reality, it was over. Nothing else mattered. Social media exploded within minutes. News networks cut into live programming. Legal analysts debated whether Patel had just destroyed his career. And somewhere across the country, 47 powerful figures were scrambling to protect themselves. Because secrecy had ended. This was no longer rumor, no longer theory. It was official congressional evidence. And the man who once promised transparency had chosen silence. 3 minutes. That's all it took. 3 minutes of documents, one signature, one refusal to testify, and an entire cover-up unraveled in front of the nation. This wasn't just about Epstein anymore. It was about how power protects itself, how institutions bury truth, and how long justice can be delayed when the accused are influential. But the wall had cracked, and once cracks form, collapse is inevitable.
Yeah.